Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive. This time we're going to be talking about Jesus, and specifically taking a look at this text, talking about Jesus.
Ooh, this is a good one.
Yeah, have you had a chance to look it over?
Oh yeah, it's intense.
Yeah, and it's really interesting how it kind of frames the idea of the cross, right? Because on the one hand, it's a symbol of suffering and humiliation, but
And it's also triumph and glory.
exactly.
Yeah, that's the paradox right there at the heart of it.
So how does this text talking about Jesus approach that? I mean, right away, it paints a very vivid picture of Jesus suffering. It talks about the thorns pressed into his brow, the nails driven into his hands and feet, the blood flowing from his side, all for our salvation.
Yeah, there's no sugarcoating it, is there?
Not at all.
It really drives home the point of just how much he sacrificed for us.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in. I mean,
Yeah.
for me, just reading those words, I can't even imagine what it must have been like to actually experience that. And I wonder, for you listening, how does that visual description make you feel?
It should make you stop and think, shouldn't it?
Yeah.
About what it means for us today.
So we're moving from the historical event of the crucifixion to like the implications for us now.
Right, and that's where this whole idea of taking up your cross daily comes in.
Oh yeah, that phrase. I've always found that a bit puzzling.
Well, the text highlights Jesus' words in Luke 9:23, where he says, "If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow me."
So what does that look like practically speaking? Taking up our cross daily. I mean, is it about like big dramatic acts of sacrifice?
Not necessarily. I think the text is pointing to something more than that. It's more about the everyday choices we make. Those little acts of self-denial where we put Jesus first, even when it's hard.
So it's less about waiting for some huge moment of sacrifice and more about a constant kind of surrender.
Yeah, exactly. A posture of obedience.
Okay, I'm starting to get it. And the text uses this analogy of a seed falling to the ground, dying in order to produce new life.
Right. It's saying that our willingness to suffer to die to ourselves, that's actually the path to true life.
That's pretty powerful. So it's like reframing challenges as opportunities for growth.
Exactly. Instead of seeing them as just random roadblocks in our way.
It's almost like the cross itself, right?
Yeah.
A symbol of both death and resurrection.
Absolutely. It's both suffering and triumph. But the text doesn't just focus on the hard parts.
Right, there's more to it.
It reminds us that suffering for Christ is never in vain.
Just like Jesus emerged victorious, so will his followers.
That's where the triumph and glory come in.
So there's a promise there.
Oh yeah, a big one.
Okay, well, I definitely want to hear more about that. What does this text say about the glory that awaits those who take up their cross and follow Jesus?
Oh, it's very clear. It says, though the cross represents suffering, it also leads to triumph. And it points to the resurrection of Christ as proof.
Yeah, the resurrection, that's key, isn't it? I mean, without that,
The cross would just be defeat, suffering with no purpose. But the resurrection, it changes everything.
it shows that death isn't the end.
Exactly.
But how does the text connect that to taking up our cross? I mean, how does going through hard times lead to glory?
It uses a couple really good analogies. One is about refining gold through fire. You know how the fire burns away the impurities?
So our struggles, they're like that fire. They purify us,
Yeah.
make us stronger.
Exactly. And the other analogy it uses is an athlete training for a race. All that hard work, that training, it's preparing them for the victory.
So it's not about avoiding the hard stuff. It's about using it.
Yeah, embracing it, knowing it's all part of the process.
And it's leading to something amazing.
The text even says, every trial, every sacrifice, every act of obedience done in his name will be rewarded beyond measure.
Wow, that's a big promise. But it's hard to remember that sometimes when you're right in the middle of it.
Oh, absolutely. When the challenges feel overwhelming, it's easy to lose sight of the big picture.
So what do we do then?
Well, the text has something to say about that, too. It says, your path may be marked with hardship, but take heart. Your Savior has walked this road before you, and he walks with you still.
It's like having the ultimate companion right there with you. Someone who gets it.
Someone who's been there.
And that's what following Jesus is all about, isn't it? It's not just believing in him way off in the distance. It's about knowing he's right here with us,
In the thick of it, yeah.
even when things are tough.
The text says that the cross, even though it's heavy, it's shaping us. It's making us more like Christ. It says the cross may seem heavy now, but it is shaping you into the image of Christ, preparing you for the glory that is to come.
So it's not just about bearing the weight. It's about letting it change us.
Exactly. That's where the real transformation happens.
And that's what leads to glory.
The text ends with this powerful call to action. It says, press on, O Christian, for the cross leads to glory.
It all ties together, doesn't it? The suffering and the sacrifice, but then the hope, the promise of something incredible waiting for us.
It's a journey, but it's a journey with a purpose.
So for our listener, what's the main thing you'd want them to take away from all this?
The cross, it's not the end. It's the beginning. It's the doorway to a life that's full of meaning and purpose, and ultimately eternal glory.
Even in the midst of suffering, there's hope.
Always.
And God is with us every step of the way. He's shaping us, preparing us for something amazing.
That's beautifully put.
We've covered a lot of ground today, but there's still more to explore. In the final part of our deep dive, we're going to get into the practical side of all this. How do we actually live out this call to take up our cross and follow Jesus in our everyday lives? Okay, so we've talked about what the cross means and what it looks like to take up our cross daily, this amazing promise of glory. But how do we actually put all of this into practice in our everyday lives?
Well, that's the question, isn't it? And this text, it gives us some really practical guidance.
I'm ready to hear it. What does it say?
Well, first of all, it talks about surrender. It says that real discipleship, it's not about trying harder on our own. It's about giving up control and letting God lead.
Okay, so it's not about willpower. It's about letting go.
Yeah, exactly. Trusting in God's plan, even when we don't understand it.
Even when it's hard.
And it's not a one-time thing either. It's like Jesus said, take up your cross daily. It's a daily practice.
So every day, we choose to align ourselves with God's will.
That's it. Making those choices big and small that reflect what he cares about.
And the text also mentions community, right? It says we're not meant to do this alone.
Absolutely. We need each other. We need the support of other believers to help us stay strong.
I can definitely relate to that. I've had times when I felt like giving up.
Yeah.
But having my church family there to encourage me, it made all the difference.
It's like sharing the weight of the cross, bearing each other's burdens.
It makes it a little lighter for everyone.
Exactly. And the text also talks about keeping the right perspective, remembering what's really important.
So not getting caught up in the day-to-day stuff.
Right. Keep your eyes on the eternal, the things that will last forever.
Because the challenges we face here, they're temporary.
But the rewards of following Jesus, they're eternal.
It's like that image of the athlete training for a race. The training is tough, but it's worth it because of the victory that's coming.
Exactly. Following Jesus, it's not about escaping suffering. It's about embracing it with purpose, knowing that it's all part of something bigger.
This has been such an insightful deep dive. I feel like I have a whole new understanding of what it means to take up my cross.
Yeah.
What about you listening? What's resonated with you the most? What will you take away from this conversation?
As you reflect on all of this, here's a final thought. What if you knew for certain that every hardship you faced, every struggle would ultimately lead you to victory? Would it change how you approach those challenges?
That's a powerful question to think about. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.